I'm Darko, and you're welcome back. In my previous video, we have been discussing the question of is God responsible for everything? Is God responsible for everything? And I talked about the fatalistic doctrine that many religions espouse. And unfortunately, many Christians also believe that God is totally responsible for everything that happens to us as human beings. And I was saying that sometimes we we humans and theologians especially have created a God that we can blame for everything, a God that is totally different from the God revealed in the Old and New Testament scriptures. The way that we teach about God, the way we think about God, sometimes is completely divorced from the God that is presented in the Old and New Testament. So we blame God for everything. We attribute everything to God, whereas in many cases, God is not responsible. I mentioned that God is not responsible. God is not solely responsible, or He's not responsible alone for what happens in this world. I talked about the works of the devil. Satan is at work, and our own responsibility. I also talked about how God is not solely responsible for how we look. And I said I was going to go into more details in this second video. Now, when you look at the genetic composition of a human being, I have already mentioned that the first two human beings, God was 100% responsible for both their physical and spiritual matter. Their physical and spiritual composition, God was 100% responsible for their genetic composition, for their spirit soul. But I've also said that apart from them, from after Adam and Eve, the people that they reproduce, and from generation to generation until you and I, or you and me, God is responsible in part for the children we reproduce, but we are also responsible. Now, and I was saying that God creates systems. When the Bible says that be fruitful and multiply, Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, 27. What do we multiply? We multiply something that is there. A system is units, different units of production put together that work together to come out with an output. Okay? God creates systems. And these systems are capable of reproducing themselves. I also talk about how God created the fruits and trees and seeds. And He said the fruits are supposed to have the seeds within them. Every fruit and every tree has its own seed within it. That's the system of reproduction. Okay, so God creates systems, and human beings, what science is all about is studying the system, understanding and replicating. And that's what we've been doing. So God is responsible in part for who we are, how we look, but man is also responsible. And I said that man is responsible because I chose my own wife. My wife chose me, and we got married. We could have gotten married to different people, but it's our own choice. The Bible says that in Genesis chapter 3, verse 16, that God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son. I think before that, He says that those who are born, to all who receive, He came to His own rejected Him, but those who received Him, He gave them power to become children of God, those born not of the will of man. Okay, so there is this will of man. We are all born by the will of our fathers and our mothers. Okay, so there is the contribution of God. And there's this diagram that I've made that shows the throughput, a factory, a system. So the throughput here, let's say the throughput is the womb of the woman, is a factory of reproduction. And in this factory, there's a throughput of the contribution of the man, the contribution of the woman, and the contribution of God. So the male donates a sperm that has 23 chromosomes. The woman also contributes an ova that has 23 chromosomes. And within these chromosomes are our genes, are our DNA. That means that the way that our color, the skin, the pigmentation of our skin, the color of our eyes, our height, our size, the size of our lips, the nature of our nose, everything is in these chromosomes. Yeah, but 23 pairs are coming from our mother, and 23 pairs are coming from our father. So the choice of a mother and a father contribute to what we are. So if my father were married to a different woman, I will not have the same genetic composition that I have today. So there's the contribution of my father and my mother. The color of my eyes are black because both parents were black. If my father were married to somebody from a different race, I would not look the same way that I look today. So did God create me to be black? God created a system, and my father and mother applied that system to procreate me. That's what the word says, procreate. Human beings are actually partners with God. God created the first two beings, and after that ordered us to create, procreate, replenish, multiply, use the systems are put in place to create more people. So we are participating in the creative nature of God. When the Bible says, I've talked about the image, God has given us his image and we participate in the divine nature. That's what 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 4 says. We participate in the divine nature. And in that divine nature, we have imagination. We are able to create. So God gave us the possibility to procreate. God is the creator. We procreate. It means that we make use of a system already established by God to multiply ourselves. So in this system of procreation, we have a role. I have a role in what kind of children I produce. I have a role because I have the capacity, I'm free to determine the kind of woman I get married to. Whether she's short or tall, she's white, black, yellow, whatever, that is my choice. So, yes, did God create me to be who I am? God has a role, but my father has a role, and my mother also has a role. So in this diagram, you see that we have the input, which is the sperm with 23 chromosomes, and the ova, the sperm from the male partner with 23 chromosomes, and the ova, which is produced by the woman with 23 chromosomes. But then on top, you will see that there's a spirit soul that is given by God. Just as God took the earth, Genesis chapter 2, verse 7, God created man from the dust of the earth. And if you look at the chromosomes, they are the dust of the earth, all the elements of the earth. That's what they are. So the body is made up of, the body, our chromosome determines our physiognomy, our physical traits are determined by the chromosomes we inherit from our fathers and mothers. But there is an aspect that man cannot provide. That is the spirit soul. The Bible says after God created man from the dust of the earth, he breathed into him his spirit, and man became a living soul. So I believe, and this is my personal belief, that the man contributes the sperm, the woman contributes the ova, and when does a man have a soul? This question arises or has arisen a lot of times when we are debating abortion. People talk about, okay, when does a fetus have a soul? Because if it's not a human, then we can say that it is not a human. We have not. If we abort a child, it is not human because it has no soul. So when exactly, at what point does the fetus acquire a soul? That's a very important question that has not yet been answered. This is my personal belief. I believe that a man contributes the sperm, a woman contributes the ova. The ova, the very moment that the sperm penetrates the egg, the very moment that fertilization begins, the soul, God breathes his spirit, and a soul is produced. So from the very onset, it's a human being. From the very onset, it's in the image and likeness of God. The growth continues. The growth is determined by what kind of sperm I produce. That is why we have to be careful. The environment we live in affects the kind of sperm. You know that sometimes doctor says a man has low sperm count or he has defective sperms. Sometimes the food we eat affects our sperms. Sometimes the things we drink, what you drink, what you inhale, what you smoke, it can affect your sperms. So yes, the sperm was created, the system was created by God, but our choices, our lifestyles can still affect the kind of children we reproduce. If you are into drugs, a pregnant woman who keeps on taking drugs, it has an effect on your chromosomes, the production of your chromosomes. And for that matter, the contribution that you make into the child that is going to be born. Yes, so the man has his contribution. You contribute what you have. You contribute what you are. And what you are is affected by your environment, by your own choices, sometimes by the choices of our neighbors. Can also affect us. The air you breathe. If there's a factory nearby that is producing poisonous gases and you keep breathing that, it affects you. It affects you. Okay, so sometimes it's not only your own choices, sometimes it's only the choices of our neighbors. All these things come to play in the throughput. So you put in a sperm, the man has put in a sperm, the woman has put in an ova. God brings the spirit, and a human being is born, a child is born. The child that is born, is God totally responsible for the physiognomy of the child? No. God is partly responsible. The man is partly responsible. The woman is partly responsible. This means that be careful what you put in this body. Be careful what you eat. Be careful what you inhale. Be careful the elements that you put into your body, because it can affect your systems, your reproductive systems. It also means that be careful what you do with the throughput. What I mean with the throughput is what is in the womb. The womb is a factory that manufactures the baby. Be careful what you do with it, because there are three agents contributing. It's not just the woman. The woman contributes the ova. The man contributes the sperm. But it's God that contributes the spirit that produces a living soul. So yes, it's a woman we call something body integrity. And the women are fighting for their body integrity. It's in my body. It affects me. Yes, we know. It is if anything goes wrong, it's the woman that suffers. But it's too simplistic to think that because the thing is in your womb, it is in your body, so you have total control. You can do with that, with the throughput, you can do with whatever is in your womb, you can treat it anyhow. No. You don't have absolute right. Because a man has a contribution, and God, above all, God has a contribution. The very moment fertilization begins, the very moment the sperm penetrates the egg, that very moment, God breathes his spirit. And the fetus that is developing is entirely a human being with God's spirit, with a soul. So don't think I can just get rid of it. No. God, you are getting rid of something that is created in the image of God, something that has a contribution from God in a man, not just a woman. Right? So if you don't want to give birth, well, do whatever you want not to get pregnant. If you don't want to give birth, don't have sex. Abstain. If you can't abstain and you want to have sex, do whatever you want. Don't get pregnant. The very moment that you get pregnant, listen to me, the pregnancy was not caused by you alone. Your husband contributed 23 chromosomes through the sperm. You as a woman, you contributed 23 chromosomes through the ova. But most importantly, God breathed his spirit. And the thing in your womb became a living being. Be careful. Be careful what you do with the throughput. Be careful what you do with what is developing in your womb. It's not entirely your right. It's also the man's right. It's also God's right. If you love this video, subscribe to the channel. And please don't forget my book, The Pervasiveness of Corruption. Go and look for that book. There's a lot there that I'm sharing with you. Very important, something that you may not know. And please don't forget, subscribe to the channel and share. And I'll see you again. God bless you.